The morning started like any other Saturday in their cozy suburban home. Lisa was making pancakes in the kitchen while her husband Michael adjusted his leather jacket and helmet by the front door. The smell of vanilla and butter filled the air. As she flipped the golden circles in the pan, "You sure you don't want to come with me today?" Michael called out, his voice echoing with excitement. "The weather's perfect for a ride." Lisa smiled and shook her head. "You know motorcycles make me nervous. Besides, someone needs to finish painting the guest bedroom." She had been working on redecorating their spare room for weeks, choosing soft blue colors that reminded her of peaceful ocean waves. Michael walked over and kissed her cheek, his stubble tickling her skin. "I'll be back by lunch. Maybe we can grab that pizza you've been craving." They had been married for 8 wonderful years, and these small moments of affection still made her heart flutter like it did when they first met in college. "Drive safe," she whispered, watching him walk toward the garage. Those would be the last normal words they would exchange for a very long time. 3 hours later, Lisa was standing on a ladder, carefully painting the corner near the window when her phone rang. The caller ID showed Michael's name, and she almost didn't answer, thinking he was just checking in during a rest stop. "Hey honey, having fun?" she answered cheerfully, but it wasn't Michael's voice on the other end. It was a stranger, a paramedic, speaking in that careful, professional tone that immediately made her stomach drop. "Ma'am, is this Lisa Rodriguez? Are you the wife of Michael Rodriguez?" The paintbrush fell from her hand, leaving a blue streak down the white wall. "Yes, that's me. What's wrong? Where's my husband?" "Ma'am, your husband has been in a motorcycle accident. He's being transported to General Hospital right now. You need to get here as soon as possible." The world seemed to tilt sideways. Lisa gripped the ladder so hard her knuckles turned white. "Is he okay? Please tell me he's okay." There was a pause that felt like forever. "Ma'am, he's alive, but his injuries are serious. The doctors will explain everything when you arrive." Lisa doesn't remember hanging up the phone or climbing down from the ladder. She doesn't remember grabbing her keys or driving to the hospital. The next clear memory she has is standing in a sterile white hallway, still wearing her paint-stained clothes, talking to a doctor who looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Your husband suffered severe trauma to his spinal cord," the doctor explained gently. "The accident caused damage at the L1 vertebra level. I'm very sorry to tell you this, but Michael is paralyzed from the waist down." The words hit her like physical blows. Paralyzed, wheelchair, never walk again. The doctor kept talking about surgeries and rehabilitation and long-term care, but Lisa felt like she was underwater, hearing everything through a thick, muffled barrier. When she finally saw Michael in the ICU, hooked up to machines and monitors, she barely recognized the strong, active man she had kissed goodbye that morning. His face was pale and swollen, his usually bright eyes dulled by pain medication. When he saw her, he tried to smile, but it came out as more of a grimace. "Hey, beautiful," he whispered, his voice hoarse from the breathing tube they had removed earlier. "I guess I won't be giving you motorcycle rides anytime soon." Lisa took his hand and squeezed it tight, fighting back tears. "We're going to get through this. Whatever it takes, we'll figure it out together." And she meant every word. In that moment, looking at the man she loved lying broken in a hospital bed, Lisa made a decision that would change her life forever. She would do whatever was necessary to help Michael recover and adapt to their new reality. The next few weeks became a blur of medical appointments, insurance phone calls, and crash courses in caregiving. Lisa took family leave from her marketing job, telling her boss it would just be temporary until Michael got back on his feet. The irony of that phrase would haunt her later. She learned how to help Michael transfer from bed to wheelchair, how to manage his medications, and how to spot signs of the complications that could arise with spinal cord injuries. The physical therapist taught her exercises to help maintain his muscle tone, and the occupational therapist showed her how to modify their home for wheelchair accessibility. Their friends and family rallied around them with incredible support. Michael's brother helped install ramps and grab bars throughout the house. Lisa's sister organized meal trains so Lisa wouldn't have to worry about cooking while juggling everything else. Church members and co-workers sent cards, flowers, and gift certificates to help with expenses. "You're such a strong woman," people would tell Lisa. "Michael is so lucky to have you. She's an angel," others would say. Not everyone would sacrifice so much for their spouse. Lisa appreciated the kind words, but she didn't feel strong or angelic. She felt scared and overwhelmed most of the time. Some days she would lock herself in the bathroom just to cry for 5 minutes before putting on a brave face again. Michael struggled with depression and anger, which the doctors said was completely normal for someone adjusting to such a life-changing injury. Some days he would snap at Lisa for small things, like bringing him water that was too cold, or taking too long to help him get dressed. Other days he would barely speak at all, staring out the window with a look of complete hopelessness. "I'm useless now," he would say during his darkest moments. "You'd be better off without me." Lisa would always reassure him that she loved him, no matter what, that they would build a new kind of life together. She researched experimental treatments and support groups, always looking for ways to help Michael find hope and purpose again. The insurance company approved a wheelchair and some basic medical equipment, but there were so many expenses they hadn't anticipated. Modifications to their car, special cushions and mattresses, accessible shower equipment, and countless other items that weren't covered. Lisa's savings account, built up over years of careful planning, it began to dwindle rapidly. When her family leave ran out, Lisa requested an extended unpaid leave from work. Her boss was understanding, but warned her that they couldn't hold her position indefinitely. Lisa pushed that worry to the back of her mind, focusing instead on Michael's daily needs and therapy appointments. 6 months after the accident, they had settled into a routine of sorts. Michael had regained some upper body strength and could transfer himself in and out of bed with minimal assistance. He was seeing a counselor regularly and had started reading again, something he had always loved but had abandoned during the worst of his depression. Lisa had become expert at lifting and positioning Michael, managing his complex medication schedule, and navigating the healthcare system. She had transformed from a marketing professional into a full-time caregiver, and while she missed her old life sometimes, she told herself this was temporary. Once Michael became more independent, she could return to work and they could build their new normal together. Looking back, Lisa realizes this was the moment she should have recognized the warning signs. The way Michael had begun to expect her help, rather than appreciate it. How he had started making decisions about their daily routine without consulting her. The subtle shift from partnership to dependency that would eventually become something much darker. But at the time, Lisa was too focused on survival to notice these small changes. She was doing what she thought love required, never imagining that her selfless devotion would eventually become a prison of her own making. By the time they reached their 2nd year after the accident, Lisa had noticed something troubling. The cards and flowers had stopped coming months ago. The meal trains that once filled their refrigerator were just a memory. Even Michael's brother, who had been so helpful in those early days, now visited maybe once a month instead of every week. Lisa understood. Really, she did. People had their own lives to live, their own problems to deal with. The initial crisis had passed, and everyone assumed things had settled into a manageable routine. What they didn't see was that Lisa's routine had become a prison of endless responsibilities. Every morning started at 6:30 sharp. Lisa would wake up before her alarm, her body automatically trained to the schedule that had taken over her life. First, she would help Michael with his morning care routine, something that took nearly an hour and left her back aching from all the lifting and positioning. Then came breakfast, medications sorted into little plastic compartments, and the daily check of Michael's skin for pressure sores. The medications alone were like managing a small pharmacy. Pills for pain, pills for muscle spasms, pills for bladder function, pills for depression, and vitamins to prevent infections. Lisa had created charts and spreadsheets to keep track of dosing times, side effects, and refill dates. The kitchen counter looked like a medical supply store. "These eggs are too runny," Michael complained one morning, pushing his plate away with obvious irritation. "I've told you before, I like them firmer." Lisa looked at the eggs that looked exactly like every other batch she had made for the past 18 months. Sorry, let me fix that for you. And can you turn the heat up? It's freezing in here. Lisa glanced at the thermostat that already read 74 degrees. Her own shirt was sticking to her back from the warmth, but she adjusted it anyway. These little criticisms had become more frequent lately, small complaints about things that never used to matter. After breakfast came the daily routine of getting Michael dressed and ready for his physical therapy appointments. This used to be something they did together, with Michael participating as much as possible. Now, he seemed content to let Lisa do most of the work while he scrolled through his phone or watched television. Can you grab my blue shirt? No, not that one, the lighter blue one. And these pants make me look sick. Find the gray ones instead. Lisa would hurry back and forth, gathering different clothes until Michael approved of his outfit. She had learned not to suggest that he could help choose his clothes the night before to save time. That conversation never went well. The drive to physical therapy took 30 minutes each way, and Lisa used to enjoy these car rides as time to talk and connect. Now, Michael usually put in earbuds and listened to podcasts while Lisa navigated traffic and worried about the growing pile of bills at home. Insurance covered some of Michael's therapy, but not all of it. The co-pays, parking fees, gas money, and special equipment costs were adding up faster than Lisa had ever imagined. Her savings account, once healthy enough to make her feel secure, had shrunk to almost nothing. We need to talk about me going back to work, Lisa had suggested one evening while preparing dinner. Even part-time would help with expenses. Michael's face had darkened immediately. How exactly would that work, Lisa? Who's going to take care of me while you're playing career woman? You think some stranger is going to care about me the way you do? We could hire someone for just a few hours a day. Lots of people do that. With what money? And what happens when they don't show up? Or when they're rough with me because they don't really care? You want to risk my safety so you can go back to making PowerPoint presentations? The way he said it made Lisa's former career sound trivial and selfish. She had loved her work in marketing, had been good at it, had been respected by her colleagues. Now, it seemed like a silly dream from another lifetime. I just thought it might be good for both of us, she said quietly. I could use some adult conversation, and you might enjoy having different people around. What I enjoy is knowing that the person taking care of me actually loves me and won't cut corners or make mistakes that could hurt me. But if you're tired of our marriage, just say so. That comment hit Lisa like a slap. The suggestion that wanting to work somehow meant she was tired of their marriage felt unfair and manipulative, but she couldn't find the words to argue. Instead, she apologized and dropped the subject. The isolation was getting worse. Lisa's college friends had stopped calling after months of declined invitations. Her sister Rachel still called every few weeks, but their conversations had become shorter and more strained. You sound exhausted, Rachel would say. When's the last time you did something fun? Lisa couldn't remember. Fun had become helping Michael find a comfortable position to watch television, or successfully getting through a day without any medical emergencies. Her idea of a good day was when Michael didn't criticize her cooking or complain about how she folded his clothes. Maybe I could come visit for a weekend, Rachel had offered. I could help out so you could get some rest. But Michael always found reasons why visits wouldn't work. The guest room wasn't set up properly. He didn't want strangers seeing him in his vulnerable state. He needed consistency in his care routine. Lisa found herself making excuses to Rachel, protecting Michael's preferences while sacrificing her own need for family connection. The physical demands were taking their toll too. Lisa had developed chronic back pain from constantly lifting and repositioning Michael, but she ignored it because bringing up her own health problems felt selfish. She had gained weight from stress eating and lack of exercise, but finding time for self-care seemed impossible when every minute was scheduled around Michael's needs. Sleep had become another casualty. Michael often needed help during the night, and Lisa had trained herself to sleep lightly, always listening for sounds of distress. She would lie awake wondering if that small noise meant he was having a nightmare, or if his positioning needed to be adjusted, or if his pain medication was wearing off early. During those quiet, dark hours, Lisa sometimes allowed herself to think thoughts that filled her with guilt. She would remember what it felt like to make her own decisions about how to spend a Saturday afternoon. She would think about her old office, with its window view of downtown and the coffee shop where she used to meet colleagues for lunch. Sometimes she would imagine what life might have been like if the accident had never happened. Would they have started a family by now? Would they have taken that trip to Europe they had always talked about? Would she still be the confident, independent woman who had negotiated her own salary and bought her first car without asking anyone's permission? But then, she would feel terrible for having such thoughts. Michael was the one who had lost the ability to walk, who faced daily challenges she could barely imagine. Her problems seemed small in comparison. She was healthy, she could go anywhere she wanted, she had use of her legs. How could she complain about anything when he had lost so much? The guilt would wash over her, and she would resolve to be more patient, more understanding, more grateful for what they still had together. She would promise herself to stop thinking about the past and focus on being the wife Michael needed her to be. What Lisa didn't realize was that this cycle of resentment followed by guilt was slowly eating away at her sense of self. Each time she pushed down her own needs and feelings, she lost a little piece of the woman she used to be. And Michael, whether intentionally or not, was learning that her guilt was a powerful tool to keep her focused entirely on him. By the third year, Lisa realized she had become a stranger to herself. The woman who used to meet friends for happy hour after work, who would spontaneously decide to try a new restaurant or catch a late movie, had completely disappeared. In her place was someone who hadn't been alone outside the house for more than an hour in months. The grocery store had become her only real escape, and even that came with strict time limits. Michael would call her cell phone if she took too long, his voice tight with anxiety or irritation. "Where are you? You said you'd be back in 30 minutes. It's been 45. Lisa would stand in the cereal aisle, phone pressed to her ear, trying to explain that she had run into their old neighbor who wanted to chat, or that the pharmacy line was longer than expected. She learned to rush through her shopping, grabbing items quickly without comparing prices or reading labels like she used to do. "I was worried something happened to you," Michael would say when she returned, but his tone suggested annoyance rather than genuine concern. "Next time, maybe make a list so you can be more efficient." The lists became another form of control. Michael would review her shopping plans, suggesting she combine errands to save time, questioning whether she really needed certain items. What used to be a simple trip to pick up milk had become a military operation requiring approval and justification. Lisa's world had shrunk to the size of their house, and even within those walls, she felt like she was constantly being watched and judged. Michael had developed opinions about everything she did, from how she loaded the dishwasher to the way she folded his shirts. "The sleeves are crooked," he would say, pointing at a perfectly fine shirt. "Can you redo this? I don't want to look sloppy at therapy." Lisa would refold the shirt, then the entire load of laundry, trying to meet standards that seemed to change daily. Nothing she did was quite right anymore. The house wasn't clean enough, the meals weren't interesting enough, her help with his exercises wasn't gentle enough or firm enough. The worst part was how isolated she had become from the people who used to matter to her. Her best friend from college, Amy, had stopped calling after months of Lisa canceling plans at the last minute. The book club she had belonged to for years had moved on without her. Even her coworkers from her old job had faded from her life, their occasional texts becoming less frequent until they stopped altogether. "Why don't you go out with Amy tonight?" Lisa had suggested to herself in the mirror one evening, practicing a conversation she would never have. But the thought of explaining her situation, of admitting how small her life had become, felt more exhausting than just staying home. Michael had made it clear that he didn't approve of her friendships anyway. When Amy had called a few months earlier, suggesting they meet for coffee, Michael had listened to Lisa's side of the conversation with obvious disapproval. "She doesn't understand what our life is like now," he had said afterward. "She's single, no responsibilities. She can't relate to what we're going through. Those kinds of friendships just make you feel bad about our situation." At the time, Lisa had thought he was protecting her feelings. Now, she wondered if he was protecting something else entirely. Her sister Rachel still called, but their conversations had become tense and difficult. Rachel lived across the country, married with 2 young children, juggling her own busy life. During their monthly phone calls, Lisa found herself making everything sound better than it really was. "How are you holding up?" Rachel would ask, genuine concern in her voice. "We're doing okay," Lisa would lie, watching Michael from the corner of her eye to make sure he couldn't hear. "Michael's getting stronger every day." But Rachel wasn't fooled. "You sound tired, Lisa. When's the last time you took a break? Even for a day?" "I don't need a break. Michael needs consistency. Mom needs a wife who takes care of herself too. What if you get sick? What if you hurt your back permanently from all that lifting? Then what happens to both of you?" These were questions Lisa couldn't answer because she had stopped thinking about her own needs entirely. Her back did hurt constantly now, a deep ache that kept her awake at night. She had developed headaches from stress and had gained 30 pounds from emotional eating and lack of exercise. But admitting these problems felt like weakness, like she was failing at the one job she had left. "Maybe I could fly out for a weekend," Rachel had offered during their last conversation. "I could help with Michael, and you could just rest." "That's sweet, but it wouldn't work," Lisa had replied automatically. "Michael's routine is very specific. He gets anxious with new people." "Lisa, he's met me before. I'm not estranged, I know, but things are different now. He needs stability." The silence on the other end of the phone had stretched uncomfortably long. Finally, Rachel had said, "I'm worried about you. You don't sound like yourself anymore." After hanging up, Lisa had sat in the kitchen for a long time, thinking about her sister's words. When was the last time she had felt like herself? When was the last time she had made a decision based on what she wanted rather than what Michael needed? She couldn't remember. The days blended together in an endless cycle of caregiving tasks. Wake up, help Michael with his morning routine, make breakfast, manage medications, drive to appointments, run errands, make lunch, help with exercises, make dinner, help with evening care, collapse into bed exhausted, repeat. Even their conversations had become predictable. Michael would talk about his therapy progress, his pain levels, his frustrations with insurance companies or medical equipment. Lisa would listen and respond appropriately, offering encouragement or practical solutions. But when was the last time he had asked her how she was feeling? When had he last shown interest in her thoughts about anything other than his care? Lisa began having moments of what she could only describe as panic. She would be folding laundry or preparing medication, and suddenly she would feel like she couldn't breathe. The walls seemed to close in around her, and she would have to grip the counter or sit down until the feeling passed. During these episodes, she would think about the woman she used to be, the woman who had negotiated contracts and led meetings, who had traveled alone to conferences in other cities, who had opinions about politics and books and movies. That woman felt like someone she had known in another lifetime. Sometimes, late at night when Michael was sleeping, Lisa would sit in their darkened living room and try to imagine a different life. What would it be like to wake up and choose how to spend her day? What would it feel like to have a conversation about something other than medical appointments and insurance claims? But these thoughts always led to crushing guilt. How could she be so selfish? Michael hadn't chosen his situation. He was dealing with challenges she couldn't even imagine. The least she could do was support him without complaint. The guilt would wash over her like a wave, and she would promise herself to be more patient, more understanding, more grateful for what they still had. She would remind herself that marriage meant in sickness and in health. And this was just the sickness part. Things would get better eventually, but deep down, in a place she was afraid to examine too closely, Lisa was starting to wonder if they would. Michael seemed more demanding each month, not less. More critical, not more appreciative. More controlling, not more independent. She was beginning to realize that she had become invisible in her own life, existing only to serve someone else's needs. And the most frightening part was that she couldn't see a way out. Tuesday afternoon started like any other day in Lisa's carefully structured routine. She had just finished helping Michael with his lunch, and was heading to the kitchen to prepare his afternoon snack when she heard his phone ring. Through the partially open bedroom door, she could hear him answer with unusual enthusiasm. "Hey, Tom. Good to hear from you, brother." Lisa smiled to herself as she arranged crackers on a plate. Michael's brother Tom had been calling more frequently lately, which seemed to lift Michael's spirits. She was grateful for any connection that brought some joy into their isolated world. "Yeah, Lisa's taking good care of me," she heard Michael say, and her heart warmed at what sounded like appreciation. But then his tone changed, becoming more relaxed, almost conspiratorial. Lisa paused in the kitchen, something in his voice making her unconsciously strain to listen. "You know what's funny, Tom?" Michael continued, and Lisa could hear him clearly now. "I've got it made here. I mean, really made." Lisa frowned, not understanding what he meant. She moved closer to the doorway, the plate of crackers forgotten in her hands. "Think about it," Michael's voice carried on, filled with an amusement that made Lisa's stomach clench. "I've got a full-time servant who does absolutely everything for me, and I don't even have to pay her. She cooks, cleans, drives me everywhere, handles all my medical stuff, and she never complains because she feels too guilty." The plate slipped from Lisa's numb fingers, crackers scattering across the floor with small, sharp sounds that seemed impossibly loud in the sudden silence of her world. "The best part is," Michael continued, completely unaware that his words were destroying the woman who had sacrificed everything for him, "she's so beaten down now that she doesn't even think about leaving. Where would she go? She gave up her job, her friends, everything. She's got nothing left except taking care of me." Lisa pressed her back against the wall, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be the man she had devoted 5 years of her life to helping recover. "I used to worry she might get tired of playing nurse." Michael laughed. Actually laughed, but now I realize I was overthinking it. "She's trapped, and she doesn't even know it." Best setup ever. The words hit Lisa like physical blows. Servant, trapped, best setup ever. Each phrase carved away another piece of her heart, revealing a truth so ugly she had to grip the doorframe to keep from falling. "Sometimes, I almost feel bad about how easy it is," Michael continued, his voice casual and relaxed in a way Lisa hadn't heard in years. Like yesterday, she suggested maybe getting some part-time help so she could go back to work. "Can you believe that? After everything I've been through, she wants to abandon me for some stupid job." Lisa's mind reeled. She remembered that conversation. She had approached it so carefully, trying to frame it as something that might benefit both of them. She had emphasized how much she loved him, how she would never want to compromise his care, and he had made her feel selfish and uncaring for even suggesting it. "So what did I do?" Michael's voice took on a tone of smug satisfaction. "I made her feel guilty about it, told her no stranger would care about me like she does, made her think she was being selfish for wanting a life outside of taking care of me." Works every time. The hallway seemed to spin around Lisa. Every conversation, every guilt trip, every time he had made her feel bad for having needs of her own, it had all been calculated, deliberate, manipulative. "The depression thing really helps too," Michael continued, and Lisa could hear Tom laughing on the other end. "Don't get me wrong, I was genuinely depressed for a while after the accident, but now, I just play it up when she starts getting ideas about having her own life. A few comments about feeling hopeless. Maybe some talk about not wanting to be a burden, but was back to focusing entirely on me." Lisa slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor, surrounded by scattered crackers, her entire world crumbling around her. Every sleepless night she had spent worrying about Michael's mental health. Every time she had pushed aside her own needs because he seemed fragile, it had been an act. She actually asked if her sister could visit last month, Michael was saying, his voice filled with derision. "Can you imagine? Some outsider coming in here, probably filling Lisa's head with ideas about independence and self-care and all that garbage." I shut that down real quick. Lisa remembered that conversation too. She had been so excited about the possibility of seeing Rachel, but Michael had seemed genuinely anxious about it. He had talked about feeling exposed and vulnerable around people, who didn't understand his condition. She had comforted him, assured him that his feelings mattered more than her desire to see her sister. The key is making her think every decision is her idea, Michael explained, like he was sharing a successful business strategy. I don't tell her she can't see friends or go back to work. I just make her feel terrible about wanting those things. Make her think she's being a bad wife if she has any priorities other than me. Lisa's hands shook as she covered her mouth, fighting the urge to be sick. 5 years. 5 years of believing she was being a loving, devoted wife. 5 years of sacrificing her career, her friendships, her health, her entire identity. And he saw it as a game he was winning. The accident was terrible, obviously, Michael continued. But in some ways, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I've got someone waiting on me hand and foot. Someone who feels too guilty to ever leave. Someone who thinks taking care of me gives her life meaning. Lisa's actually grateful for the opportunity to serve me. It's incredible. Tom said something Lisa couldn't make out, and Michael laughed again, a sound that would haunt her dreams for years to come. Exactly. And the best part is, she thinks she's being noble. She thinks she's some kind of saint for staying with her disabled husband. Meanwhile, I'm living like a king with a servant who works for free because she loves me. It's the perfect setup. Lisa sat in the hallway for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, listening to Michael chat casually with his brother about sports and politics, as if he hadn't just revealed himself to be a complete stranger. The man she thought she knew, the man she had loved and sacrificed for, didn't exist. In his place was someone who saw her as a resource to be exploited, a tool to make his life comfortable. Every kind thing she had done, every compromise she had made, every time she had chosen his needs over her own, had all been feeding into his plan to keep her trapped and serving him. The guilt she carried about wanting her own life, the shame she felt when she resented her circumstances, the way she had isolated herself from everyone who might have helped her see the truth, it had all been by design. When Michael finally hung up the phone, Lisa quietly gathered the scattered crackers from the floor and threw them away. She made him a fresh snack, brought it to him with a smile, and asked about his therapy appointment scheduled for later that week. But inside, something fundamental had shifted. The woman who had walked into that hallway no longer existed. In her place was someone who finally understood that love shouldn't require the complete destruction of yourself. Someone who realized that being a good wife didn't mean being invisible. Someone who was done being anyone's servant. That night, Lisa lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Michael slept peacefully beside her, completely unaware that his world was about to change forever. For the first time in 5 years, she wasn't thinking about his morning medication schedule, or whether his physical therapy appointment needed to be rescheduled. Instead, she was thinking about herself. The woman who had overheard that phone conversation was not the same woman who had gone to bed. Something had broken inside her during those terrible minutes in the hallway, but something else had been born too. For the first time since the accident, Lisa could see her situation clearly, without the fog of guilt and manipulation that had clouded her vision for so long. She wasn't a devoted wife making noble sacrifices. She was a victim of emotional abuse, trapped by her own kindness and conditioned to believe that her needs didn't matter. The realization should have been crushing, but instead, it felt like waking up from a long, confusing dream. At dawn, while Michael was still asleep, Lisa quietly got out of bed and made her way to the kitchen. But instead of starting her usual routine of preparing his breakfast and sorting his medications, she opened her laptop for the first time in months and began researching something she should have looked into years ago: professional caregiving services. She had always assumed they couldn't afford outside help, partly because Michael had convinced her it was too expensive, and partly because she had never actually investigated the options. But as she scrolled through websites and read testimonials, she realized that many insurance plans covered home health services for people with spinal cord injuries, services that Michael had been eligible for all along. The first agency she called was surprisingly helpful. The intake coordinator explained that they had certified nursing assistants who specialized in caring for people with disabilities, and that many of their clients had insurance coverage that made the services affordable or even free. "We can have Someone there as early as Monday, the coordinator said. Would you like to schedule an assessment? Lisa looked toward the bedroom where Michael was still sleeping and made a decision that would have seemed impossible just 24 hours earlier. Yes, I would. Over the next few hours, while Michael napped in his chair after breakfast, Lisa made more phone calls than she had made in years. She contacted their insurance company and discovered not only that home health services were covered, but that they should have been utilizing these benefits all along. She called a lawyer who specialized in family law and scheduled a consultation for the following week. She even called her old boss, who surprised her by saying they would love to have her back, even part-time. We've missed you, Lisa, her former manager said. You were one of our best people. There's definitely a place for you here when you're ready. Each phone call felt like reclaiming a piece of herself. With every conversation, Lisa felt stronger, more capable, more like the person she used to be before she had shrunk herself down to fit into Michael's carefully controlled world. The hardest call was to her sister Rachel. Lisa, is everything okay? You never call during the day. I need to tell you something, Lisa said, her voice shaking slightly. You were right to be worried about me. The conversation lasted nearly 2 hours. Lisa told Rachel everything about the phone call she had overheard, about the years of manipulation and control, about how small her world had become. Rachel listened without judgment, offering support and validation that Lisa hadn't realized she desperately needed. I can't believe he's been treating you like that, Rachel said, her voice filled with anger on Lisa's behalf. You deserve so much better. I feel like I've been asleep for 5 years, Lisa admitted. I don't even know who I am anymore. You're my sister, Rachel said firmly. You're strong and smart and capable, and you've just been trapped in a terrible situation. But you're awake now, and that's what matters. By Friday afternoon, Lisa had arranged everything. A professional caregiver would start Monday morning, providing full-time care for Michael. She had spoken with a lawyer about separation procedures and her rights regarding their shared assets. She had even started looking at small apartments she could afford on her own. The weekend was surreal. Lisa went through her normal routine of caring for Michael, but everything felt different. She wasn't serving him out of love or duty anymore. She was simply finishing a job she had been doing for 5 years, like working out a notice period before starting a new position. Michael seemed to sense something had changed, though he couldn't pinpoint what. You seem distracted, he commented on Saturday evening. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, Lisa replied, and for the first time in years, she meant it. On Sunday night, while Michael watched television, Lisa sat at the kitchen table and wrote him a letter. She wrote about the phone call she had overheard, about the years of manipulation and control, about how his treatment had made her feel invisible and worthless. She wrote about the professional caregiver who would be arriving Monday morning, and about her plans to rebuild the life she had given up. I spent 5 years trying to be the wife I thought you needed, she wrote. I gave up my career, my friends, my health, and my sense of self, because I believed that was what love required. But love should never require someone to disappear completely. Love should never involve manipulation, control, or taking advantage of someone's guilt and devotion. She wrote about forgiveness, but also about boundaries. She wished him well with his recovery and his life, but she made it clear that she would no longer be available to be his full-time servant. I hope someday you understand that what you did to me was wrong, she concluded. But whether you do or not, I'm choosing to reclaim my life. I deserve to exist as more than just someone who serves your needs. Monday morning arrived gray and drizzly, but Lisa felt lighter than she had in years. She had packed her belongings quietly over the weekend, moving boxes to her car during Michael's afternoon naps. Her new apartment was small but sunny, with a view of trees instead of medical equipment. At 8 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. Lisa opened it to find Janet, the professional caregiver from the agency, carrying a clipboard and wearing scrubs decorated with cheerful cartoon characters. Good morning, Janet said with a warm smile. I'm here to meet Michael and get started with his care plan. Lisa introduced Janet to Michael, who looked confused and slightly panicked. What's going on? Lisa, Why is she here? Janet is going to be taking care of you, Lisa said calmly. She's very experienced with spinal cord injuries, and your insurance covers her services completely. But I don't want a stranger taking care of me. You take care of me. That's how we do things. Lisa looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing but pity. He genuinely seemed to believe that she would continue serving him forever, that his manipulation and control were so effective that she would never wake up to what was happening. I left you a letter explaining everything, she said, picking up her suitcase. Janet has all your medical information and the contact numbers for your doctors. She'll take excellent care of you. Lisa, wait, you can't just leave. What about us? What about our marriage? She paused at the door, looking back at the man who had spent 5 years systematically destroying her self-worth while convincing her it was love. There is no us, Michael. There's just been you, and someone whose job it was to make your life comfortable. But I quit. As Lisa walked to her car, carrying the last remnants of her old life, she heard Michael calling her name from the doorway. But for the first time in 5 years, she didn't turn around. She didn't go back to comfort him or apologize or try to fix his distress. Instead, she drove toward her new apartment, toward her new job, toward a life where her needs mattered just as much as anyone else's. She drove toward freedom.